Anime Recapped here. Today, I'm going to explain a supernatural harem anime called Yuna and the Haunted Hot Springs. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. If you're down on your luck, then exorcising a faceless apparition with a punch for an elderly couple might help turn that around. At least, that's what worked for Kogarashi. Yokai are a class of different supernatural creatures in Japan, all ranging from harmless to pure evil. Fortunately for the couple, the faceless yokai was just a prankster, but they're still thankful that Kogarashi helped them. Kogarashi is a hands-on psychic, so punching yokai into exorcism is a regular Tuesday for him. Still, they want to thank the teenagers somehow, so he asks them if they know a certain inn. This leads Kogarashi to the Hotsprings Inn, Yuragi. It's an impressive-looking place with a traditional architecture, and the rent there is dirt cheap, coming at a measly 1,000 yen. Of course, there's a catch. The reason why the price is so low is because the inn is haunted, and Kogarashi figures as much. When the Yuragi Inn was thriving years ago, a student's dead body was found in the bath. Rumor has it that the spirit's still wandering the place to this very day. Patrons got scared away, so the inn is nothing more than a boarding house now. This should be enough to put off most potential boarders unless they're a horror movie protagonist, but Kogarashi is completely unfazed. He's convinced that he'll be able to handle any spirit with his ghost-busting mitts. Kogarashi's first stop is the hot springs, and while he's relishing and finally having warm water to bathe with, he suddenly feels a distinct presence in the bathe with him. On edge, Kogarashi prepares to clobber the ghost to Kingdom Come. But to his surprise, the ghost of Yuragi Inn isn't the usual guy ghost he's come to expect. It's a cute ditzy girl, and she's completely nude in the bath with him. Kogarashi screams in surprise, making the initially unaware girl scream back and start floating. Upon realizing that he can see her in her bareness, the spirit's embarrassment mounts, and she unknowingly knocks poor Kogarashi out with several floating buckets. The ghost only snaps out of her mortified frenzy when she notices that Kogarashi's on the cusp of passing out. It dawns on him just how big of a problem it is that the ghost of Yuragi Inn is a girl. The only exorcism technique he knows is beating spirits up until they go away. And while the ghost girl's frantically apologizing to him, Kogarashi thinks about how he can't punch a woman before drifting into unconsciousness. Later on, Kogarashi wakes up and finds himself laying in a woman's lap. The cheerful-looking lady introduces herself as Nakai, the innkeeper of Yuragi Inn. Immediately after, the door to the room slides open, revealing more women. One of them is the energetic, air-headed, and booze-loving Nanko, who has Kogarashi all fidgety because of her very revealing clothes. Then there's cold and intimidating Sagiri, who threatens him to behave with a knife. Sagiri promises that if he does anything to corrupt the public morals of the inn, then she will rain divine punishment down upon him. The knife ended up slashing his cheek, so the third girl, Yaya, suddenly emerges from between the surprised Kogarashi's legs to lick his cheek. In his shock, he demands to know what she's doing, and the reserved cat-like girl just tells him that she's trying to heal him. For better or for worse, things are definitely lively there in Yuragi, but the atmosphere changes when they find out that Kogarashi's sleeping in room 4. Suddenly, they all turn their backs on him to walk away, as if completely uninterested now while telling him that it was nice knowing him. Soon, Kogarashi learns why they reacted that way when he finds the ghost girl in his new room. After a poor attempt at hiding from him, she cheerfully introduces herself as Yuragi Inn's resident ghost, Yuna. He also learns that Yuna can only sleep in room 4 since that's where she was staying at when she was still alive, forcing them to live together in the same room. Late into the night, the new roommates find themselves unable to sleep. Yuna uses this moment to ask Kogarashi why he came to the inn. He quietly explains that ever since he was born, he's always been an easy target for spiritual possession. It brought him nothing but trouble, and led him to being passed around from one guardian to the next. His misfortune peaked when he got possessed by a day trader spirit. This left Kogarashi on the street, crippled with debt. Because of that, he apprenticed under a psychic so he can learn the art of kicking spirit butt just so he can regain his ordinary life. So he can stop being a burden because all his life, that's what Kogarashi thought himself to be. In response, Yuna softly tells him that she's happy he's there. More somber now, Kogarashi doesn't respond to this, and instead he asks about her lingering regret. His master told him that the longer a spirit stays on Earth, the more likely it is to turn evil. So it's better to resolve her lingering regret before it's too late. The next day, Kogarashi relishes in his lucky streak as he manages to get a job. On his way back to the inn, he sees a monk standing outside, staring at Yuna on the balcony. It doesn't take long before the same monk makes his way to Yuna's room. Using his psychic powers, he restrains her and introduces himself as Sekan, a Guma monk of the Gudon clan. Without a second to waste, he aggressively uses his forced ascension technique on Yuna to exorcise her. While Kogarashi's running to her rescue, he overhears Sakan demanding her to leave the world before she becomes an evil spirit. This makes Kogarashi stop in his tracks, wondering if he should just leave it to Sakan. But he falters as soon as he hears Yuna refuse the monk. She insists that she wants to stay in the world and that there's still many things she wants to see and do. "I have a new friend," Yuna cries. "I want to know even more about him." Unmoved, Sakan asserts that she's just a dead person. But just as he's imbuing more power into his technique, Kogarashi steps in and breaks Yuna's psychic bindings. Sakan immediately tries to attack him with his staff, yelling that there's nothing more immoral than siding with the dead. Kogarashi evades his attack with ease, and after claiming that he gets to decide who he punches, he socks Sakan straight in the face. With the monk rendered unconscious, Kogarashi reminds Yuna that she'll be sent to hell if she doesn't pass on. Since Yuna seems unsure, he steals his resolve and promises that he'll help her resolve her unfinished business and that he'll make sure to make her happy. Touched by his sentiments, Yuna starts crying, so a flustered Kogarashi adds that there's no cheaper place than Yuragi. In her sheer happiness, Yuna thanks the heavens that Kogarashi's dirt poor. But while the two are having a moment, Sakan starts groaning. Kogarashi immediately pushes Yuna out of the way, but without intending to, he accidentally squeezes her tata in the process. Kogarashi's red, Yuna's red, Kogarashi goes brrr. This time, the boy is flung to the hot springs, and because he's the protagonist of the series, he ends up in the women's bath. Of course, this also means that he ends up getting beaten up by 4 very angry ladies. For a brief moment, Kogarashi thinks that he should have let Sakan exorcise Yuna after all. The following day, it's revealed that everyone in Yuragi Inn can see Yuna. She just asked them to help her hide so the guests won't be scared off. This has Kogarashi wondering if they're all ghosts there, so the ever-playful Nanko shows her legs off to him and draws him to her chest to prove that she's real. Here, Kogarashi also learns that Nakai is the oldest among the group, which hardly makes sense to him since she looks like she's the youngest. But before Kogarashi could get any answers, Yaya would crawl out of the table. It's unclear what Kogarashi's more surprised by, the fact that Yaya has a long cat tail, or the fact that she's just in her underwear. And anytime something obscene comes up in Kogarashi's presence, Sagiri keeps trying to attack him with her kunai. Things grow from strange to stranger when they start hearing the clamoring of angry men outside the inn. The boarders head over to the balcony and are greeted by the sight of countless monks led by Sakan. They all went there with a resolve and determination to exorcise the entire place. But the other monks start faltering when they realize that the inn houses some very attractive women. They all get fired up, however, when their leader tells them that they can capture the women and do whatever they want with them. Filled with depraved thoughts, the monks charge forth. Kogarashi instructs the girls to go hide, but Sagiri coldly tells him that he should be the one hiding. She hurls several kunai towards the monks, swallowing them in an explosion. Kogarashi's dumbfounded, so Yuna excitedly explains that Sagiri is a demon-slaying ninja. But that's not all. Even the Ditsuki Nanko has insurmountable power within her. She lifts one of the monks up with ease and uses him as a bowling ball to strike the other ones. A horn protrudes from her forehead as she does this, signifying that she's a demon. Nanko is the descendant of a demon leader, and the more she drinks, the stronger she gets. Adding to the sheer oddity of it all, a giant cat suddenly joins the fray, and it has none other than Yaya perched atop it. She's possessed by the cat god, and she can instruct it to do her bidding. Yaya lets it do as it pleases with the men, so the cat god happily toys with them. And last but not least is Nakai, who is a protective household deity with the power to manipulate anyone's fortune. The remaining monks all receive good news, ranging from winning the lottery and being the illegitimate son of a business tycoon. This has them bolting away and dissolving their fellowship, leaving the borders of Yuragi Inn alone for good. But as the world continues to spin, problems go, only to make room for new ones to come. One day, Kogarashi finds a little cat wandering the halls. He takes it in his arms and pets it, but the cat angrily breaks away from him. To his surprise, it transforms back into a very bare and very upset Yaya, who absolutely hates being touched. Sagiri catches wind of this and grows even more hostile towards Kogarashi. Later on, Nakai calls for a meeting and announces that she's received some requests for Kogarashi's eviction. In accordance to the Yuragi house rules, they have to settle it over a game, where the losers have to do as the winner says. This results in a ping-pong match, with Sagiri and Yaya playing against Kogarashi and Yuna. Sagiri's determined to free Yuna from what she believes to be Kogarashi's depraved and immoral clutches, so she and Yaya pull all the stops to overwhelm Kogarashi. But as it turns out, Kogarashi was once possessed by the spirit of a ping-pong coach who forced him into a hellish training regime. And to tip the match in their favor, Yuna activates her poltergeist abilities by remembering her embarrassing moments with Kogarashi. Soon enough, however, she gets used to those memories. But even without Yuna's powers, Kogarashi gives it his all to win the match, so he can fulfill his promise of making her happy. His sentiments move her, so in a last-ditch attempt to activate her powers again, Yuna flashes Kogarashi, and it's her sheer mortification from his staring that wins them the ping-pong match. Though she hasn't fully warmed up to him yet, Sagiri respects his resolve, and with his victory, he's allowed to keep staying in the inn. Happy days. But because we're long overdue for another grabby scene, Kogarashi slips on the ping-pong ball, causing him to crash into Sagiri and Yaya. With a boy on top of them, he accidentally grabs both Sagiri and Yaya's chests. He even squeezes them for a good measure before fully realizing what exactly is happening. Of course, this ends with Kogarashi scratched up and stabbed, but he's somehow still alive. Time passes, and it's finally time for Kogarashi to attend high school. The boy is both excited and proud of how far he's come, but while he's celebrating finally having a chance at the normal life he's always dreamed of, Yuna suddenly shows up to greet him by the school entrance. She wants to congratulate him for starting school, and though this isn't an ideal situation for Kogarashi, he lets her come with him. In a class, a student directs Kogarashi's attention to the prettiest and most popular girl in school, Miyazaki. Just then, he notices Yuna approaching Miyazaki from behind, so Kogarashi follows suit to have her back off. But just as he does, Yuna suddenly lifts Miyazaki's skirt, which leads to Kogarashi getting accused of creeping on her. Afterward, an apologetic Yuna tearfully explains to Kogarashi that she wanted to change her clothes into the school uniform, but to do that, she has to really imagine it. But while she's attempting to transform, she ends up poofing away all her clothes with Kogarashi watching. In her embarrassment, her poltergeist ability activates again, making everyone and everything in the classroom float. Things calm down after the teacher arrives, and when the shell-shocked students get settled, it's time for roll call and introductions. For Kogarashi's turn, he earnestly introduces himself as a spirit medium, even telling the class that what happened earlier was caused by the ghost he brought with him. The boy bows to the class and sincerely apologizes for the disturbance. But as Kogarashi expected, the whole class just erupts in laughter, calling him both delusional and perverted. Despite his classmates' mockery, he sincerely offers his help to anyone who needs it before settling down. This pays off when Miyazaki herself approaches him. Though she doesn't quite trust Kogarashi yet, she tells him about how her stuffed animals have been moving on their own. He doesn't hesitate to help her, and despite Miyazaki's reluctance, she takes him to her room so he can check out the toys himself. Punching the stuffed animals doesn't work, so Kogarashi surmises that they're being possessed remotely. To get to the bottom of this, he asks a very willing Yuna to check inside the stuffed animal. She's determined to make up for all the trouble she's caused Kogarashi. But before Yuna could even do anything, the toy suddenly makes a face at her. In her terror, Yuna accidentally levitates everything in the room, including Kogarashi. He ends up falling on top of Miyazaki, putting her in a very compromising position. This humiliates the girl, and thinking that he's just lying about the whole psychic thing to perv on her, she kicks him out of her home. Once more, Yuna's apologetic towards Kogarashi, but he isn't bothered as he simply remains focused on helping Miyazaki out. That night, while Miyazaki's ruminating over how she treated Kogarashi, her stuffed toys suddenly attack her. Just as they're ripping up her clothes, Kogarashi comes bursting through her window. After plummeting them, he notes that beating up the toys is useless, and that they have to track whoever's possessing them. And for that, Kogarashi reveals that he had Yuna follow a spirit line leading to the culprit while he was dealing with the stuffed animals. With that, Kogarashi carries Miyazaki to the park, where he finds Yuna face to face with the coded culprit. The identifiable figure throws a leaf, which then transforms into a large beast. Yuna and Miyazaki are terrified, but the beast is no match for Kogarashi, who manages to take care of it with just one punch. The display frightens the stranger, who finally reveals herself to be not some creepy old menace, but a little raccoon girl, and also a menace. Her name is Kyuzu, and she comes from a village of supernatural raccoons. At age 10, raccoons are supposed to leave their village and transform into an adult human to blend into society. Unfortunately for Kyuzu, she's bad at transforming herself. This forced her to live by herself in temples, hopeless and directionless, until she saw Miyazaki. Kyuzu was so taken by the pretty girl that she put her leaves in Miyazaki's stuffed animals to observe her because she has something that Kyuzu was, and those are, you guessed it, a bountiful pair of tatas, which Kyuzu thinks is important for adult women. So now, Kyuzu's crying and stewing in regret over what she had done. She laments that she just wants to see Miyazaki's chest one last time, and feeling sorry for the girl, Miyazaki forgives her. Kyuzu is elated, and she takes this as her cue to expose Miyazaki's twins and marvel at them, much to the older girl's embarrassment. Since Kyuzu has nowhere else to go, it is decided that she can stay in the Yuragi Inn, at least for the time being. She's having the time of her life there, partly because the boarders are taking care of her, but mostly because there are valleys aplenty. As for Kogarashi, he's given some sweets by Miyazaki as thanks for his efforts, and even though she can't see or hear Yuna, she makes it a point to say hi to her too. Kogarashi's over the moon, and he never thought that the day would come where he'd be able to eat sweets again. Though he had spent a lifetime being possessed by spirits that kept trying to make Kogarashi's life anything but his, he's forged a path of his own to turn things around. Despite the ridicule and turbulences being thrown at him, Kogarashi just kept going, putting one foot forward at a time. And now, he's finally experiencing some semblance of human normalcy in his life. Or at least, as normal as things could be with him, sharing his treats with a happy ghost girl.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Turn on notifications. And leave a like, it really helps the channel out. Thank you for watching.